Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Cabinet meeting. It's now 7 p.m, and I would like to start this meeting. Before I go any further, I noticed that we've got some of our colleagues in the public gallery, Councillor Kent, Councillor Spate and Councillor Arnold. I would invite all three of you, if you wanted to join us in the meeting if you wanted to ask questions or comment on anything. So do feel free to come forward. I'm Councillor Andrew Jeffries, and I would like to remind everyone present at this meeting is being live streamed and recorded for publication on the Council's website. Item 1, apologies for absence. Received 1 apologies for absence, that being Councillor Maney. Item 2, minutes of the previous meeting held on the 13th of September 2023. Can I have agreement that it's an accurate record? Councillor Arnold?
Thank you, Leader. Page 8, top first paragraph. I think I can categorically state that I didn't say Councillor Arnold added that in terms of governance and project book, work is being completed on a love version. I can't remember what the version was, but it wasn't that.
So with that amendment, is everyone in agreement for the minutes?
Agreed.
Thank you. So members have also been provided with a copy of the exempt minutes from the meeting on the 13th of the 9th, 23. If there are any comments on the accuracy of the exempt meetings, this would need to be clarified in a closed session. So we would need to go offline and ask members of the public to clear the gallery. Can I ask if anyone wishes to make amendments to these? No? Okay, so can I have members' approval for these minutes?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Item 3 is I've agreed to accept 1 item of urgent business, which I believe you have a report. Can I ask Councillor Snell to introduce the report, please?
Thank you, Leader. This is regarding the taking on of PwC to look at our investments and funds, etc. So, as we all know, the Council faces a wide range of financial challenges, all of which we are currently addressing. We're divesting of investments, we've got capital asset sales, we're reducing our capital programme, and of course we're making revenue budget savings. As you can probably appreciate, that this is a huge task, and it's probably greater in magnitude than anybody else in the country is currently dealing with. Given this, it's very sensible for us to procure some sort of short-term support in the area of revenue budget savings. So we've looked at which model to use to do that, whether it be in-house, we've had a look externally, or a mix of the two. So what we decided is that we're going to need some specific reports, support, some focus support. So we've decided to take on PwC for a 22 weeks of work to look at our budget. They're going to find us about £5.2 million recurring savings. So it's recurring years of that sort of saving, and that's going to cost us £800,000. That's going to be coming from the Transformation Fund, which is roughly a pot of about £12 million. So with that, I recommend the report to the Cabinet.
Thank you, Councillor Snell. I mean, I just I agree with you there that £800,000 costing to save us not only the £5 million each year concurrent, but also to find us ways of finding savings towards the 18 million. The other thing is that we all know that the finance department is stretched, and the officers are in the process of restructuring and reordering them. These people have expertise, and they're able to pass that expertise on to the existing members of staff that we have, who are incredibly hard stretched in this particular department. Is any other member wishing to speak? No? Councillor Spate, yes, please. Councillor Slough, would you like to answer that?
Yes, I would. I find it difficult to understand why you're finding it difficult to understand, Councillor Spate. I mean, as I said previously, we are well on the way to finding the 18.2 million we need for 24-25. But of course, it's an ongoing project. You know, we've got a very poorly resourced finance team which have been working absolute miracles to do what they've done already, and we need the assistance to make further savings going forward from that. So, you know, it's not going to be the case that you know, we're just magicking these things out of thin air. We've got certain advice on our previous investments, our asset sales program. You know, we need the advice. We don't have that expertise within the council. So by bringing the expertise in, not only do we find ways of making the savings that we need to make that we didn't identify ourselves, but the knowledge that these guys are bringing in with them, we're learning from that the entire time as well. So it's a case of making sure that our savings program is robust now, rather than, you know, we get a couple of years down the line, we don't bring in the expertise, then we start to struggle. So it's an £800,000 one-off spend to save around £5 million every year recurring for the next few years. So I think that's a good spend. It's coming from a transformation fund that we've got in place, which is £12 million. So it's not money that hasn't been identified previously. The fund is there to use for just this kind of thing. So, you know, we need the council to recover, and we need the best help we can get to enable us to do that. And this is what this paper is doing.
Thank you, Councillor Snell. Any other member wishing to comment? Okay, so the recommendation is, it is recommended that the Council enter into a contract for services with PwC through to February 2024 for the value specified in the financial implications to support the Council's change and budget process. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Item 4, items of declaration. Does anyone have any items of declaration? Any declarations of interest? Councillor Spate, if it is genuinely a declaration of interest, yes. Because Councillor Spate, it's not for you. Sorry, Councillor Spate, it's not for you to comment on the proceedings as we're going. The fact that I've asked for approval by the Cabinet, that I've asked for approval. They've given approval. Every single member of this Cabinet has just approved that report. They have. Thank you, Councillor Spate. No items of declaration. Item 5, statement of the leader. I don't have a huge statement this evening, only just to say that I think all our thoughts and prayers should be this evening and for the foreseeable future with all those people involved in the terrible situation in the Middle East. And we all should hope for a speedy recovery, a speedy resolution to the difficulties there, and hope for less loss of life. Item 6, briefings on policy budgets and other issues. Does anyone have anything they wish to say? No. Item 7, petitions submitted by members of the public. I'm not aware of any petitions submitted by the public. Item 8, I'm not aware of any questions submitted by non-executive members. Item 9, I'm not aware of any matters referred to the Cabinet for consideration by overruled scrutiny. Item 10, delegated decisions taken since the last meetings. This will be a new standing item on Cabinet agenda at our request, the Cabinet's request, which we are trailing to improve. We are trailing to improve transparency of decision making. At every Cabinet meeting, a list of delegated decisions taken in the preceding month will be listed. The ED2 forms are published online and are subject to call-in. This is a trial, and any feedback is welcome from both Cabinet and from the public. And I hope that all members welcome that decision. Councillor Spate.
Sorry to be a pain.
Apologies to them if they didn't hear what you said. You haven't switched your mic on again.
My mic had green on it. It's now got red on it.
It needs to go red for you to be able to speak. So apologies if people
You sent a
have not
Democratic
been able
Service
to
officer
hear.
to fix
Councillor Spate,
It
you
just
just seem to
sums
be
up- It just sums up.
You seem to be.
It just sums up the contempt
Councillor
that
Spade.
you hold democracy and the rights of these members to be
Spade.
heard.
Councillor
Councillor
Spade.
Jeffries, you should be ashamed of yourself.
Thank you, Councillor Spate, for your comments. But just to make it clear, since I've been leader of this authority, there has been greater transparency and openness than there has ever been. And I will continue in that vein. And I will continue in that vein while the public out there agree with me. Thank you, Councillor Spate. Councillor Spate, please be quiet, otherwise I'll ask you to leave. Councillor Spate, please be quiet. Item 11, Councillor Spate, please be quiet. You're just showing off to the audience. Item 11. Item 11, Draft Thurrock Design Charter. As Councillor Maney is unable to be here this evening, could I ask Mark Bradbury to report on this report, please?
Thank you, Leader. Can I first apologise that the version circulated and published includes the recommendations to the Planning, Transport and Regeneration Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I'll come back to the recommendation that should be before you. My apologies for that. But moving on to the content of the report, the Thurrock Design Charter provides an update to the adopted Thurrock Design Strategy, SPD, which was adopted in March 2017. The Charter reflects recent changes to national policy guidance and best practice in relation to the design and placemaking, as well as aligning with more recent published council strategies. The development of the Charter and its consultation aligns with the development of the local plan and helps inform and provide a baseline for strategic policies on design, including the forthcoming borough-wide design code. As a local planning authority, the Council is expected to follow the National Planning Policy Framework as a material consideration, which requires local plans to set out a clear vision for design, including the preparation of design guides or codes, developed with local communities that reflect local aspirations. Additionally, the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill intends to make the production and adoption of a design code a statutory requirement for all local planning authorities. The Thurrock Design Charter has been refined to act as a vision statement for wider design code for Thurrock, preparing for this proposed new statutory duty. I'm not proposing to read them out, but paragraph 2.6 sets out the key differences between the current adopted design strategy from 2017 and this proposed draft. Returning to the recommendations, my apologies again, but the recommendation should read, Cabinet is asked to approve the draft Thurrock Design Charter for public consultation and agree to delegate authority to the Interim Director of Place in consultation with the relevant portfolio holder to make any changes resulting from that consultation and to adopt the final version.
Thank you, Mr. Bradbury. Has any member wished to comment? Councillor Cockshaw.
Thank you, Leader. Just really quickly, just picking up really from the ONS comments about talking about the language and how this gets. Sorry, that's better if I go closer. Just how the language and how that goes out to consultation for the public. I think one of the key differences between I remember the last design strategy and this one. I think it did seem a bit high level. It was a bit complex, a bit more difficult for it should be one of those documents everyone should be able to just pick up and read and understand what are we actually trying to deliver here. It's one of the really key arms of how we're going to go forward as a borough. So I'm really pleased that part of this actually is changing the language, and I think if we can just make sure as we slightly tweak it a little bit, just be mindful of it as we go forward to consultation, it'll be really important.
Mr. Bradbury, did you want to come back on that?
No, yes, thank you for making the point, Councillor Cockshaw. Yes, the report was considered at the Planning, Transportation and Regeneration Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and whilst they accepted all of the recommendations, yes, they did encourage us to consider the language in parts of the report, and yes, that will be done before we go out to consultation.
Any other member wishing to comment? No, the only thing I would... Oh, sorry, Councillor Snell.
It's just a brief point. I mean, I agree with the recommendations. I mean, it's quite a clear report, and it sets out everything that it needs to, and you know, it does look quite uplifting and encouraging. Just a minor point, really. If this is similar to the versions that's going to go out to the public, on page 6, there's a yellow page with white type. It's unreadable. So if this is an aberration, fine. But if this is what's going to go to the public, that needs to be changed. Thank you.
I'm sure Mr. Bradbury saw that, has heard that. The only comment for me is, you know, to me, this is the first step. You know, we've promised a local plan. This is the first, one of the things that we need to make sure that we get a local plan. So I'm really keen on this. If there's no other member wishing to speak, could I ask, because I have not got the recommendations written down in front of me, Mr. Bradbury, could you read out the recommendations again, and then I can ask for agreement from Cabinet?
The recommendation is to approve the draft Thurrock Design Charter for public consultation and agree to delegate authority to the Interim Director of Place in consultation with the relevant portfolio holder to make any changes resulting from that consultation and to adopt the final version.
Do I have agreement on that?
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 12, direct payment support services. Please note that the report does not have an exempt appendix, and therefore I would remind members and officers not to discuss the contents of an exempt appendix whilst we are live streaming. If anyone does wish to discuss the contents of the appendix, we can go into closed session and ask members of the pub, and I would then need to ask members of the public and the press to leave. Can I ask Councillor, does anyone wish to before we get... Okay, so can I ask Councillor Cockshaw to introduce the report, please?
Thank you, Leader. It's a relatively straightforward report. We have a statutory duty to provide direct payments to service users, and this is both vulnerable adults and children that this does. And this is essentially a payment we make directly to service users, enabling them to live more independent lives, but also actually enabling them to pick their own care provision and services they can engage with. Just as a bit of an overview, we do currently support nearly 400 managed adults accounts. We also have 489 active adult direct payment accounts, along with information provided to them, with 161 children also being provided with info and support. At the moment, the current provider has been held by Purple Zest for quite a long time. We're coming to the end of a 9-year period with them. And one of the key things I really think I need to highlight is we haven't changed the budget for for the direct payment administration. So this is the back roll payroll dealing with His Majesty's Revenues and Customs. So it's part of that we just don't actually have that either skilled workforce or the systems in place in the council to deliver that service ourselves. And one of those, as I said, that key takeaway is we haven't actually increased this at all since 2009. We've had a slight increase in 2019, but we're still working very closely to the £70,000 budget that was assigned to it in 2013. Obviously, lots of things have changed. We've had a 107% increase in usage of direct payments, so the administration of this system has gone up. We're also encouraging more and more service users to take forward the direct payment system to enable them to actually, as I say, live more independently and pick what services they wish to engage with. The recommendation is that we go out to market tender, and essentially we're actually looking for what the market comes back to us to actually understand and talk about the market price. Obviously, we're looking at with a budget up to 120,000 per annum, but this is a case where we're quite happy to we'll go out to tender and look at what was the market come back to us with. And while we are waiting slightly on price, obviously quality comes in as well. It was a matter that ONS discussed back in July. They were just keen to understand themselves. But I think the report sets out much of the other bits. But if any member has any questions, more than happy to answer.
Not on now. Thank you, Councillor Cockshaw. And I fully support the idea that we get money directly to the users themselves and they decide where they spend the money. They know best. You know, as much as we've got experts working in these fields, they do know best where they need to get their services from. So fully support the idea of this. Does any other member wish to comment? Councillor Arnold.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's a vital service and it's one where the user needs to have confidence in the supplier. So, yes, it's right to go to tender. Yes, it's right to look at all of this. But could we just make sure there's some good consultation with users of the service to make sure that they feel confident if there are some changes coming?
Thank you, Councillor Arnold. But yeah, it's just before, obviously before Cabinet, we have gone to service users already. We've gone to also care providers as well to have a conversation with them. They're really happy and think the current service is really high quality. So it's really important we actually captivate on that. We don't let that slip. But that I can assure you, it was raised back. We'll go back to ONS or back to HOSC in July, and I remember there we were talking about actually the process hadn't just quite happened yet. The engagement had just happened, I think, the week before. So that has happened. They're happy with the current service. As I say, it's just making sure that doesn't slip as we go forward.
Thank you, Councillor Cockshaw. If no other member wishes to speak, I'll move on to the recommendation. So recommendation 1.1, that Cabinet agree that the contract be put out to tender with no fixed price pointing, enabling the market to price against the activities required to ensure a sustainable service for the lifetime of the contract, which is 4 + 1 years. Do I have agreement?
Agreed.
Thank you. 1.2, that Cabinet agree that the contract be resourced to ensure statutory obligations can be appropriately met and the responsibility for the awarding of any tender be delegated to the responsible director, corporate director for adults, housing and health, in consultation with the portfolio holder for adult social care. Do I have agreement on that?
Agreed.
That was all members, I believe. Item 13, Revs and Bens. Councillor Arnold, would you like to introduce your report, please?
Thank you, Leader. As you know, there are layers of what can only be described as probably not best operational practices being uncovered as the new council does its deep dive to get us on the road to recovery. This report looks at the council's billing systems for council tax, non-domestic rates and housing benefits, and it's integral to supporting council, and it's one of the largest applications at the council. So I guess what that means is operationally it was easier to not rock the boat and has led to this council not doing any real due diligence on the contract and has allowed the contract to run on with extensions for 20 years without going to tender. I can't go back in time and fix that, but I can lead the Cabinet forward into making the right decision now. It's not going to be an easy thing to tackle and requires a full corporate project to be scoped, but it's the right thing to do. Changes to the contract will impact on multiple systems, and it's the single largest database that this council has with over 70,000 properties to be managed. So you can see tendering a new contract and any switchover is going to be quite complex and will need at least a year of scoping prior to beginning any kind of implementation. Council needs to be mindful of resources and timescales, both of which need to be realistic and factored in with all other finance projects. So having said that, 20 years without market competition in play is not conducive to giving us the best position for cost or quality of the service, and it's definitely time to tackle this head on, but realistically. Hence why I'm recommending that we go for option 2, whereby we seek a short contract of 3 years to keep the ship steady, so to speak, and allow time for a full and thorough tender process, review of requirements, scope and implementation of any new contract.
Thank you, Councillor Arnold. Does any member wish to comment? Councillor Snell.
Yeah, thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Arnold, for your report. I mean, yeah, this is one of these things that we were speaking about earlier. You don't know what issues you've got until you look, and to not tender a contract for 20 years is madness. And it is right that we're doing it now. I mean, who knows how much money we might save? We don't know that, but you know, we got to at least look. And this is the sort of thing we're going to be picking up as we go forward through the process. So I agree with the recommendation because it is right that we take our time to do this properly. There's no point rushing into a contract and making a Horlicks of it from day one. So I think the recommended option is the right one. It gives us time using the system which we're confident in. Let's face it, we're not saying that we're not confident in the system that we've got, but we've got no idea whether it's cost effective for us. So completely agree and happy to support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Snell. Any other member wishing to speak? I'd only just add that, I mean, I agree entirely with what Councillor Snell just said, and obviously Councillor Arnold's recommendations. It's right. I can't believe for 20 years we've not gone out to tender, so it's right that we now do it, but we take our time to make sure we get it right and we get the best service that we can get. So if no other member wishes to speak, I'll go to the recommendations, which is 1.1, approve the procurement of a 3-year contract from November 2023 using the Crown Commercial Services Contract framework as set out in section 3.2 of this document. Do I have agreement?
Agreed.
Thank you. 1.2, approve the commencement of a competitive procurement exercise from November 2023 to enable a 5-year contract with the option to extend for 5 years to be in place in November 2026, utilising the CCS framework or other framework or competitive process. Do I have agreement?
Agreed.
1.3, delegate authority to the Director of HR, OD and Transformation and the Chief Financial Officer to agree and award a new contract in consultation with the portfolio holder. Do I have agreement?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Next item, item 14, Grays Underpass. Again, it was a report to be introduced by Councillor Maney, unfortunately can't be here, so Mark Bradbury is to report to Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. This is one of 3 reports before you this evening that have been highlighted in the Council's Best Value Inspection as lacking in good project management, clear communication and engagement throughout the projects. And these projects have been the subject of reviews to enable us to bring back updates on the current position and recommendations as to the way forward. To avoid repetition later in the evening, each of the reports has been considered by the Planning, Transportation and Regeneration Overview and Scrutiny, and in each case the recommendations were unanimously supported by those committees who welcomed the clarity and openness of how we were reporting these projects now compared to in the past. The review of Grays Underpass started with a focus on understanding what the true cost of the current scheme would be. Members should be reminded that the original budget approved by Cabinet in 2017 was 27.4 million. That increased in 2021 to 37.3. The current forecast budget is £46 million based on the latest costings from Network Rail, having put the design through their GRIP design programme. Forecast cost estimates have increased consistently as the detailed design has been developed, and greater certainty around the implementation impacts on the operational railway have been taken into account. This has resulted in a significantly longer build programme and more expensive technical solutions required to deal with utility diversions. So in summary, whilst inflation over the period of this project from 2017 has been a factor in cost, it's clear that a lack of understanding of the real implications of this project from the outset are the major cause for concern. And that is set out in the report. However, the review did acknowledge that the existing level crossing continues to represent a clear safety risk And whilst there have been no fatalities or serious injuries, the number of near misses has increased significantly. The review therefore recommends that an alternative design and delivery approach is examined based on the development of a station quarter concept. This would seek to deliver a new pedestrian crossing over the railway, potentially as part of a new station and mixed-use residential development. It is proposed that Cabinet approve the adoption of this approach and instruct officers to examine the potential for the establishment of a strategic partnership with Network Rail and others, including the drafting of operational principles covering possible design options, partnership arrangements for delivery, and roles and responsibilities. A further report on those options, including funding options, will be brought back to Cabinet for consideration before the CELEP South East Local Enterprise Partnership Accountability Board meeting in February 2024.
Thank you, Mr. Bradbury. I mean, I too welcome, all three reports that we're about to discuss as well. You know, the BVI made it clear, you know, we messed up on these things, we need to get it right, and this is the first step in the right way. I welcome that the ONS also welcome the report and have asked, you know, a series of questions of officers. So, you know, transparency and openness, it's out there. I look forward to the actions that they have asked for. So officers agreed to circulate a breakdown of current costs, and officers agreed to keep the committee updated with regular reports. And I wholeheartedly support that from the ONS. I welcome the report, and I welcome comments from any other member. Councillor Cockshaw.
Thank you, Leader. No, I much agree with what you've just said. I think it's really important that these reports are regularly, particularly these three projects, are coming back to Cabinet, to ONS, to members, really, to actually understand these are key three regeneration projects we were talking about across the borough, particularly with this Grays Underpass. I think one thing I want to just pick up on and maybe stress is, I know we're looking at getting into partnership with Network Rail, but it's the importance of just making sure we are working with all the other partners in the regeneration area. That includes what Morrison's want to do opposite, New River, everyone in the high street. We've got the Towns Board there. It's making sure we are moving all in the same direction. We don't want to be going in a direction where we're all pulling on different ways. We've all got different ideas for what we want to achieve. We need to be committed to one project. We're all stakeholders in the same boat. We all want to see a regeneration in the high street, and let's work all together actually to deliver that.
Absolutely, and I think this is the first step to doing this, that we work with all stakeholders, all those that you mentioned. We have to work with them. More so, we have to work with C2C and Network Rail, which I don't think we have done it previously in the past. You know, we have to work with them to resolve this issue. For those of us that walk across that crossing daily, it is dangerous. We shouldn't be having that in a high street. And you're right, all stakeholders need to be involved in this. Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Leader. Much of what I was going to say has already been said by Councillor Cockshaw. But Thurrock has always had a lot of ambition to regenerate, but it's always been the follow-through that's been the problem. And so I very much welcome that these reports are now coming a lot more often, where we get a better look at what went wrong in a lot of ways, but we've still got that ambition. We've still got that ambition to look to the future of what the area we can make, and I very much welcome that.
Thank you. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Councillor Arnold.
Thank you. And thank you, Mark, for sharing the comments of overview and scrutiny. It's good to know that it was unanimously supported, but it could have been a different picture. So it's not your issue, but it's more of a reporting issue to Cabinet, that the meeting was on the 28th of September, and yet we haven't seen the minutes or discussions of that until today. And that's a bit late, because as Cabinet, we would have liked to have been able to look at that in advance. The other thing is, for me, I've mentioned it before, it's about knowing when to stop. This is large investments, large sums of money. What actions and learnings are you taking forward to make sure that we know when to stop?
It's a very valid point, and one that was raised at overview and scrutiny as well, and we've made it clear in the report that at this stage we are just exploring what the options are, what the delivery options are, and then bringing it back to Cabinet. I think historically with a number of these projects, it was sort of like press go and then keep going until somebody asked a question. The point here is that going forwards, we will bring this back through scrutiny and to Cabinet at every point that a decision is required. We are clear that this needs to be something the Council has ambition and vision, but is not likely to be the delivery partner. Network Rail, and it's one of the key reasons why they are specifically referenced, and I agree with the leader's comment that, and also other councillors' comments, that we need to bring in all stakeholders, but Network Rail are the right people to deliver this, and therefore we need to make sure that we bring options that are supported by them, supported by us, supported by the wider community in Grays, and we are clear about who is paying for it. And one of the things that was pointed out at Overview and Scrutiny is that we need to make sure that in any project going forwards, the balance of cost is much better towards the rail operator and the rail authority. The previous proposal placed a very small financial burden on them and the bulk on us. And that's not what we want to do going forwards.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, Mr. Bradbury just actually spoke about a lot about what I was going to say. Some great points here. We do need to bring everybody, all our partners in to working on this, but I get the impression that in the past we've been more, let's say, lenient with partners. I think we need to make them know that their responsibility is just as high as ours. So we have to push that forward and make sure that all those partners realise what their responsibility is, as well as the councils.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Any other member wishing to speak? So we'll go to the recommendations then. So 1.1, agree to cease further development work on the underpass scheme and withdraw the planning application.
Agreed.
Thank you. 1.2, delegate to the Director of Place in consultation with the portfolio holder for regeneration, strategic planning and external relationships and commissioners authority to implement the development strategy set out in paragraphs 4.1 to 4.3 and to assess the operational principles covering a potential station quarter development partnership with Network Rail and other strategic partners. Do I have agreement?
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 15, which is Stanfordley Hope Station. Appendix 2 is in the exempt area. Unless members wish to discuss that particular appendix, I suggest that we stay in open session. Okay, no. So, Mr. Bradbury.
Thank you, Leader. Similarly, this project has been the subject of review to understand the current cost of the proposals and then make recommendations as to the way forwards. The main aims of the project to develop a transport interchange that will connect bus, rail, cycle, taxi and pedestrian modes of transport at Stanford Hope Station, expand the capacity of the station, implement a package of works that meets the requirements of travel plans for London Gateway and unlocks the next phase of development at London Gateway, and provide improvements to public transport infrastructure and service reliability for new housing developments along with the major employment growth sites at London Gateway and Corriton, and to help curb traffic growth and minimise growth in transport emissions. So this is much more than just simply a new station building and bus interchange. There have been numerous stakeholders involved in the project, including UK Power Networks, CELEP, Train Operating Company C2C, Network Rail and DP World. And we've actively promoted the redevelopment of the station building. And we were instrumental in the demolition of the old station building on the proviso that a new station building would be procured. This is still the expectation of both Network Rail and the train operator. And failure to procure the new station building could result in separate financial claims from both Network Rail and C2C. There have been significant design changes since it was originally promoted. and that has led to a lot of the delay. It's worth pointing out that, as set out in the report, there remains a deliverable scheme to bring forward the station, but that following a tender, significant cost increases as a result of changing interest rates and forward projections around interest rates meant that we were unable to proceed with that. The review has identified what the current costs of moving forward with these projects is, and the recommendations set out how we wish to move forwards in bringing those to a point where we move forwards. As with the last project, there is a lot of work to do around confirming how these projects are going to be funded and confirming the delivery approach. And again, it is likely that Network Rail and or the rail operator will be the delivery partner for these rather than the council being the delivery lead. So there's a lot of detail around the current costs, the background to how we've arrived at them, and the options that have been considered in the report, and I'm happy to answer questions. Next steps are set out in paragraphs 3.11 as regards the station building, and as I say, there is further work to do on the interchange that will come back in due course.
Thank you, Mr. Bradbury. Just a couple of comments from me. I mean, I think the people of Stamford-le-Hope should be reassured, because they have been let down in the past over this, and it's not a happy tale for them, that we've got a clear direction now. We're moving forward. I was pleased to read the comments from the ONS who said, and I'll read it, members thanked officers of the report and for their honesty within the report and the importance of delivering the project for the people of Stamford-le-Hope was highlighted by the committee. 100% agree with that. This is the way forward. We will deliver a station for the people of Stamford-le-Hope, and I think this is the start of it. Would any other member like to speak? Councillor Snell.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Mr. Bradbury, for your report. It's just really an issue of funding. You may recall we had a council meeting recently where there was some doubt as to whether we'd used some SELEP money for the correct purpose. Can you reassure me that the money that SELEP have put into this scheme has been used for this scheme, and are you confident that SELEP will regard it as money well spent?
I can confirm that the money has been used on this scheme, and that our continuing dialogue with SELEP and our reassurance to them that there is a credible delivery plan has enabled us to work with them constructively around their deadlines to ensure that we retain the ability to use that funding. There was every chance that that funding would have been withdrawn by SELEP over the course of the last year, and it's only the work of colleagues in my team with SELEP that has reassured them that we are moving forward in a credible way and that they should continue to support the project.
Thank you.
Any other member wishing to speak? Okay, so I shall go to the recommendations, which is 1.1. Note the outcome of the project review process and the funding options. Do I have agreement?
Agreed.
Thank you. And 1.2, approve the Phase 2 Stamford-le-Hope Transport Interchange Design option and the submission of the planning application. Do I have agreement?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. We now move on to item 16. Perfectly on Thames regeneration. Mr. Bradbury.
Thank you. As set out in the executive summary of the report, in order for Purfleet Centre Regeneration Limited to fulfil its role as lead developer and deliver the planned programme set out in the development agreement, they were required to access sufficient additional levels of funding, whether equity, debt or grant, to bring the project forward, and to build a well-resourced team able to effectively manage all work streams. PCRL has insufficient equity funding and has therefore sought investment from a number of third parties. They failed to achieve this despite numerous conversations and meetings that we have engaged in with a range of delivery partners. And this has resulted in a 9th reservation of rights letter to be issued by Homes England on the back-to-back agreement with PCRL in relation to the housing infrastructure grant. So members will recall that we have a housing infrastructure grant allocation of 75 million that has clear deadlines as to when it needs to be spent, and 9 times Homes England have written to us reserving their rights to bring that agreement to an end. The Council is concerned, therefore, that there is a material risk that the development milestones as set out in the GDA cannot be achieved, and given the prolonged and continued default position, there is a real possibility that Homes England will invoke provisions within the GDA and withdraw the HIF funding and commence legal proceedings against the Council to claw back the grant expenditure to date. Officers have assessed with external legal support all legal remedies available to the Council to address this default situation and minimise any financial exposure to the Council. Following this assessment, it is recommended that the Council agree to mutually withdraw with Homes England from the GDA. This effectively terminates the Purfleet HIF grant determination agreement and the back-to-back grant determination agreement with PCRL. Homes England have confirmed in writing that it will not demand or seek repayment of any of the funding to date in connection with the funding agreement, subject to the Council agreeing to the mutual withdrawal and entering into the appropriate deed to enact this. PCRL have continued to attempt to address the funding situation, and the Council is mindful to examine alternative funding options, the latest being a proposal involving the English Cities Fund, a consortium of Homes England, Legal and General and Muse. Whilst encouraging, the response to the current ROR does not contain sufficient detail for the Council to realistically conclude that the scheme can be delivered within the time frame of the current grant agreement. However, following early engagement with PCRL and representatives of the English Cities Fund, officers believe there is merit in examining further the current proposal. Officers are therefore recommending that the Council work with PCRL and ECF over a period of 3 months to establish whether there are firm proposals. So in summary, the HIF funding is no longer available to us. It will either be withdrawn with possible penalties for clawback, or we mutually withdraw. But the project still has potential. There is interest in delivering it, and we want to pursue that interest. We want to progress discussions with English Cities Fund as to how that might evolve, but at the same time look at all other options for delivery of this project. As with the other reports, it doesn't make good reading when you look backwards, but there remains optimism going forwards, and the negotiated stance that we have developed with Homes England protects the Council from clawback and is therefore to be recommended.
Thank you, Mr Bradbury. Slightly unusual, I know there are 2 gentlemen I know, and I don't wish to put you on the spot, I know who are from Purfleet. I'm more than happy if you wish to comment, if you wanted to come forward and speak to Cabinet, or not. It's entirely up to you. If you would like to come, can we make sure they've got a microphone, please?
Testing.
Thank you. Thank you, Leader. This is an unexpected pleasure. As you're probably aware, and I know most people in the room know who I am, I'm chair of Purfleet-on-Thames Community Forum. We've been involved directly and supported directly this project since its fruition. And I've been involved before then, from the very word go when we had Thurrock Thames Gateway Development Corporation. So I've got a long history, and I must admit that I'm deeply saddened with where we are now, because the forum and myself and Trevor, my vice chair, have put in an incredible amount of work to support this project. And we're now in a position where we don't know what's going to happen. And Purfleet is the end of the borough. And when you go to Purfleet, what do you see? A lot of houses, but no social infrastructure whatsoever. And it's been like that. I've lived in Purfleet 43 years. And the only thing I've seen in it is a new senior school in a place where it wasn't our decision, although we know we needed one. A new health centre, which isn't fit for the purpose, it's not big enough. We've gone from a community of 4,000 people in 1980, we're now 12,000 people. But what have we got to support it? Not a bean. And I put this firmly in the hands of previous administrations and the lack of truly guided planning. Because we've got all these developments and not one of them has brought forward any infrastructure to make things better. We've lost green space by the bucket load and nothing's been done with it. So this project was a way to rectify all that, and it hasn't, which is a real shame. I don't know why. I wish I did. But we know that we had 75 million quid to help support the infrastructure. And we've now got, 27 million quid of it's been spent, and we still haven't got any infrastructure. So I don't know why. I don't know why the remaining, I'm going to round it up, 50 million quid hasn't been spent on something, whether it was spent on the road or the bridge or improving the health centre that we've got. So these are my questions really, is why haven't we moved forward? Why didn't we make use of that funding? And really, I've got nothing else to say except I hope that our new interim director, who I've had several conversations with, can wave a magic wand and help us get back on track. Thank you very much, Leader. And thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much for your comments. And whilst it won't help, I know, but I too am saddened and angry that the council started these projects and the people of Purfleet never actually saw the benefits of them. You have got a new school, that's really good. I have visited, it's a fantastic school. And I suppose if it goes some way to give you some reassurance that I can't correct some of those previous decisions, those previous mistakes, but moving forward, I hope that we can, any kind of development, we can take the community with us and provide the kind of infrastructure that every community throughout Thurrock needs. I don't know some of your specific questions, whether Mr. Bradbury's able to answer them now or we get back to you later.
I'm happy to pick up a couple now, and as the chair of the Community Forum has indicated, we have a continuing dialogue about how we continue to engage the community in resolving this situation. I think the key to the question about why the HIF funding was not spent is simply that the match that was required to enable it to be spent, because it was only covering part of the cost of the infrastructure, was not able to be sourced by PCRL. But I would reassure you that in our discussions with English Cities Fund, our continuing dialogue with Homes England, who have indicated that this is a project they want to continue to support, albeit that the HIF deadlines did not allow them to continue to do it through that vehicle, are very much focused on investing in key infrastructure early in the project to create a sense of place, which in turn will drive value and viability for the development, which will then enable the rest of the infrastructure to follow. So we recognise in those conversations that this is a project that the community has played an enormous role in helping to design, and that the infrastructure delivery is key to your continued engagement and support.
Thank you. You're more than welcome to stay where you are if you wanted to take a seat and listen if other members wanted to speak. Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Cockshaw.
Oh, thank you, Leader, and thank you, Mr. Rolls, for your intervention here. And I think it really underlines actually what's happened to Purfleet. We have failed Purfleet, and that is the bottom line. Mr. Rolls will know I spent my formative years when I first moved to Thurrock. I was a Purfleet resident. Admittedly, again, underlines the fact of no services when I'm commuting from Purfleet to Stamford every day to go to school. I think that kind of personifies it really for me, that we haven't delivered what was promised. We are so many years down the line. We have spent there's been so many millions spent, and there is a square root of near enough nothing, and 17 nearly finished houses on this scheme. This is absolutely unacceptable, and it is a shock. It's of all the three, this is the one that shocks me the most, because it's the one that we've always been committed to. We've always been saying, yes, Purfleet's getting a town centre, Purfleet's getting a town centre, and it hasn't. And I'm glad that Homes England are actually still committed to delivering this, and this is we need to get this over the line. We have promised this, and we have promised this. We promise it anymore, it's going to look like a white elephant. Like, let's be honest. And over the last few years, I think other members of Cabinet will know, I've grown increasingly sceptical of how some of this is actually being delivered. And I think if we move forward, particularly looking at new opportunities of how do we get this done? We deliver a town centre with the services Purfleet actually needs. Because at the moment, as it's been said, there is nothing there for residents beyond the bare minimum. And in some cases, not even that. So we need to get this right. And I'm really glad there is a start of that process here, that I can see the basis of that moving forward.
Thank you. Mr. Bradbury.
Yeah, I just wanted to reassure members that one of the key reasons that Homes England are not seeking to claw back, aside from the fact we're working mutually with them, is that actually a significant amount of the expenditure here has created value that can be used going forwards. So there is land acquisition that money has been used for. There are remediation works that money has been used for, and there are project designs that potentially can be taken forwards. I'm not denying that there hasn't been some of that money has not produced outcomes, but it is worth noting that that money has not all been spent on stuff that is not of any value going forwards, and that's a key reason why they are prepared to not claw it back, and why they remain committed to trying to find a route forward with us to build on that investment to date.
Thank you. Any other member wishing to comment? Councillor Arnold.
I remember when I was all those years ago, I think it was about 9 years ago, when I was first made a councillor and was in the chamber, and the gentleman that spoke tonight was there talking about renaming Purfleet on Thames, and I admired your tenacity then, and I still admire it now. And please, sir, don't lose that tenacity, because it's community-based place decision-making that we really need, and you're fundamental to that for Purfleet. And I know it's a roller coaster, and we've been up and down. I've had similar thoughts probably to you over Stamford Station and the roller coaster ride we've had there. This is the right thing to move forward. I'm glad partners are still talking. Please still have your input. Please bear with us, because this is all part of this transformation and change that the BVI is now fast forwarding us into. I feel it's a good thing, because we've been talking a talk of transformation and change for a few years now, and now we do really need to start walking a walk.
Thank you. Any other member wishing to speak before I go to the recommendations? Yes, sir.
Hello, Trevor Batchelor, Vice Chair, Purfleet on Thames Community Forum. John was put on the spot a little bit. One key question that I think we both feel needs to be asked is, with things going forward, be it with PCRL or without PCRL, can we be assured that the development that happens in Purfleet on Thames is not just houses? It needs to be shops, hotels, the new bridge, the new station, everything that goes with it. Can we have that assurance?
Mr. Bradbury?
That is certainly the intention, and that is the conversation we continue to have with Homes England, PCRL, and increasingly with English Cities Fund. So that's certainly our intention, and if we are going to deliver this speedily and effectively with community support, then you've made it clear to me, and you've made it clear tonight between you, that we need to make sure that that is the case.
Thanks very much.
Can I just add to that as well, from the administration, as we move towards the local plan? The local plan, which is about the whole area, is not just about building houses. We've got to make sure that we have other infrastructure, like shops, like jobs, businesses, you know, all of that has to be taken into account. So if it helps, this administration doesn't just want to build houses, we want to build communities that have all those things attached to it as well.
Thanks very much.
So we'll move to the recommendations, which is 1.1, that we note the financial risk assessment and delegate authority to the Director of Place in consultation with the Director of Law and Governance and the portfolio holder for regeneration, strategic planning and external relationships and commissioners. 1, to endeavour to negotiate a tripartite exit agreement with Homes England and the Purfleet Centre Regeneration Limited, and if that is not a viable option, to agree a mutual withdrawal with Homes England from the Purfleet Housing Grant Determination Agreement, which will lead to the determination of a back-to-back GDA with the Purfleet Centre Regeneration Limited, and 2, to take all steps necessary to terminate the development agreement and the associated agreements following the determination of the Grant Determination Agreement and the back-to-back GDA if it is satisfied that this is the best option for the Council. Do I have agreement on that?
Agreed.
1.2, agree to examine the development options being proposed by PCRL and the English Cities Funds and delegates authority to the Director of Place in consultation with the Director of Law and Governance and the portfolio holder for regeneration, strategic planning and external relationships to negotiate and bring back to Cabinet an alternative development proposal no later than the 13th of March 2024 Cabinet meeting. Do I have agreement with that?
Agreed.
Thank you, everyone. So that concludes the business of this meeting. this evening, and I now declare the meeting closed at 20:07. Thank you, everyone.